So my interest in this whole issue of diversity in the corporate setting started out when I was working my first corporate job in the US, because I worked before in corporate Trinidad, but not in the US, and I was doing my PhD at the same time down in Florida. And one morning, I came into work, and you all didn't see me then, but I used to have very long dreads, and I would wrap them around my head, kind of like Marge does on The Simpsons. So I came into work, and they had a banner rolled up, and they had placed it on the top of my cubicle. So to get into my cubicle, I would have to duck under the banner and go into my office. So after the third time, I said, whose idea was it to place this banner here? And the secretary at the time, she said, oh, Sacha, we just thought you would love limboing underneath it every time you went in and out of your office. And I said, of course I would, because I come from a country of idiots who walk around limboing every hour on the hour. That's what we do in Trinidad and Tobago. We limbo. And she said, oh, no, I didn't mean anything by it. I said, of course you didn't, but it doesn't matter. And it started me thinking, why is it that people would make a statement that is clearly, perhaps at worst prejudicial, but, at best prejudicial, but at worst racist and problematic, and not even be aware that it is that? What is it that is happening in our society where people are not aware? Is it that we're not having enough conversations? Is it that no one told them that that conversation or that statement was problematic? And so I let it go. Fast forward a few years, I'm doing a research project, and I had been emailing this gentleman. So he was the CEO of a corporation, and the arrangement was I was going to come in and have a personal interview with him. So he knew we was all by email, so he knew he was corresponding with Dr. Mathews. And I showed up for my interview, and he was clearly shocked. But he didn't know, he couldn't even compose himself. He just didn't know, because he was so obviously expecting another Dr. Mathews, one that was more male, perhaps of a lighter hue, and certainly did not have dreads. That was the ultimate. And so for the next 15 minutes, he proceeded to interview me, because he felt he needed to check my credentials out, because maybe Florida State didn't check me out, or University of Pacific. They just all hired me on a whim. So he was going to do them all a favor. So he started the interview process, and he said to me, you're a professor, right? I said, that's correct. Don't you have to have a degree to do that? Absolutely. So then he said, oh, well, what is your training in? What's your degree? And I said, which one? I have 3. And he said, okay, well, I guess our interview will start now. I said, I guess it will. And I think, it really struck me why it is he felt that he was entitled to question me and go through this, and then ask me something like this. And I said to him, can I ask you a question? If I was a white male, would you have asked me that? And he was so shocked, but that's because he didn't know me. If he did, he wouldn't be taken aback by that at all. So my talk today is about why corporate just doesn't get it. And I think a lot of I was looking at a lot of the stereotypes that we see in the media, how the media portrays minorities. And often, these portrayals are distorted. They're not representative of the wider population. They tend to be very much one-dimensional and stereotypical. I don't know what stereotype I fit. I know certainly I don't fit the typical professor stereotype. Just look at my shoes. How many professors wear shoes like that? They're not very professorial, are they? So I've always been very conscious of breaking stereotypes. Yet I've found, since I've been in the US, people always want to box me in. And this talk is about trying to understand, it's one thing for an individual on a one-on-one basis to try to box you in, but for corporate America to do it, and it's costing them money, it just doesn't seem like it's a sensible plan. So often I've found that the reflections that we see in the media is more so a reflection of majority attitude than it is a reflection of minority reality. And so I started to investigate how minorities are portrayed in the media. And I went through a number of YouTube videos and I found some very entertaining stuff that I'm going to share with you guys. Many of them in 2010, 2011, not stuff from the 1970s, not stuff from the 1940s or the 1950s, when we understood that people just didn't get it, but recent stuff. So my first video, I'm going to introduce you guys to a First Nations activist in Canada. And he's talking about something that happened with Eskin water and a portrayal that they came up with that I thought was just brilliant.
On the train, they have the 24 newspapers. It's one of those free newspapers that is given out in the Montreal transit system. I was flipping through it and noticed this ad for Eskin water. And the ad depicted, had 3 non-native men who were standing around like as if they were in an attack pose, and had said something on the bottom about defending the water's purity. And they were dressed up as some sort of a native person. They had the loincloth, your stereotypical indigenous individual, like a tribal person from a throwback to Amazon or something, or native from whatever region. I know what they were trying to depict in that ad, but I found it kind of insulting, say the least. Having white guys, when painted up and dressed up like natives, to try and sell bottled water, which is taken from native land in the north of Quebec. It's a Quebec company, Esca. So I kind of found it very distasteful.
I wouldn't do that.
Do what?
Mix the Esca.
Why not?
Eskin warriors.
What?
Folklore has it they've been protecting the purity of Esca for 8,000 years.
Yeah, right.
You're lucky. You missed.
Whenever they depict native on film, native.
Isn't that brilliant? I'm wondering, I said to my students, we were having this discussion, and I said, what's troubling to me? Not only did this seem like a good idea at the advertising executive level, but then the people at the company at Eskin Water said, we love it, gotta do it. And there was no voice in the midst that said, probably not a good idea. Because once they ran it, there was so much, it was such a huge problem, they had to pull it. Money spent on, paying for all this advertising that they have to pull. So money spent on now having to issue PR and press releases and work the media to explain why they really didn't mean it. And what other, most decisions that we make in corporate, if at the end of it there's so much bad press, we would kind of stop making those decisions, we would hope. But it continues to happen. So I have a few examples for you that I think are quite entertaining. I love this one. Subway came up with a pimped out Abe Lincoln. So they thought that they needed to bling out Abe Lincoln in order to sell $5 footlongs. And that in itself is not problematic, that you have Abe from the hood. But if you look at what they are suggesting that you do, so they want you to send in your own text now to them to come up with slogans and pick your text and choose your crew, because that's how the population that they're trying to reach, I guess, speak to one another. That's how they write, and that's how they communicate. Again, is this something, who in Subway, who in the advertising agency, and who in Subway thought, good idea, let's run with that. Go for Abe. I just kind of wonder about these things, but this is my all-time favorite. Because I'm not certain who exactly the hip-hop cupcakes audience is. I'm not sure if you are hip-hop before you eat the cupcakes, and therefore that's why you want to eat hip-hop cupcakes, or if it is that once you eat the hip-hop cupcakes, you become hip-hop yourself. I'm not quite sure what the intended audience was for hip-hop cupcakes. And what is very much distressing, look at the images of the lips, and I'm not sure if that is the icing. I'm not sure if that's supposed to be for the skin color or the hair color. Again, understanding that this happened all through. So not only did an advertising exec, but the people in Duncan Hines thought this was brilliant. And so that this happened recently. Look, they want you to go to YouTube to watch them sing. Nivea, this was in the last few months, came up with this ad campaign because they want African Americans to look like they give a damn. They are suggesting to a group of people that they should re-civilize themselves by using Nivea shaving cream. And the way to re-civilize yourself is to throw out an image that historically has been known to be a symbol of black power and black activism. And that's what we should throw out so we can re-civilize ourselves to this image that may or may not be something that we identify with. I saved this one for last because white is coming. I'm not quite sure where black is, but white is coming. And there is an image of a white female, Caucasian female, dominating a black individual. And again, so is this the best way that Sony thought they should promote their PlayStation? In advertising, I think often people just think of the fact that they have a message, and so there's a sender and a receiver to that message. But a huge part of what happens in advertising is this encoding and decoding process. And often people encode with no clue as to how it's going to be decoded. And the reason they have no clue is because it's all based on field of experiences. We encode based on our colored glasses, and we decode based on our colored glasses. So if it is that you have no idea how that other person is going to decode, how do you know how to encode? And I am suggesting the reason why we don't know how to encode is because we have no diversity in that boardroom on the levels that we need to have that diversity. Advertising agencies are historically known for coming up with channels and messages that work, but they have been making mistake after mistake when it comes to minority depiction in the media. Highly problematic. And often it's because no one is giving them that feedback until it's very late in the game. And so understanding that encoding and decoding happens based on field of references, and understanding that encoding and decoding is very, very cultural. Here are some figures that I got from the Bureau of Labor that speaks to that lack of diversity in advertising management. 0.8% black. The national average is 12.9. 0.8%. They can't even muster up a whole percentage point in terms of management. 2.3% Asian. National average is something like 4.5. So probably doing a little bit better. 9.6 in terms of Latino representation in that boardroom. National average is something closer to 16%. We are not doing a good job in terms of corporate trying to get it. We're not. We're really not doing a good job. I thought I got this quote from Dan Wyden, who's a known advertising executive, and I thought it was just brilliant. He said, the issue of diversity continues to gnaw at me because, like it or not, in this business, I essentially hire a bunch of white middle-class kids, pay them enormous, enormous sums of money to do what? To create messages to the inner-city kids who create the culture the white kids are trying like hell to emulate. And it really does speak to the problem that we have in this issue of diversity. You know, I think we have to realize that by 2050, America will be a brown America. And that might frighten some people, but that is just a reality. In fact, in California, it's going to be much faster. In California, it's 2025. 1 in 3 births today are minority births. That's happening in 2010. That happened in 2010. And what we need to recognize is that buying power is now 268% more. It is an increase of 268% over 1990 levels. And yet, our hiring practices are not even 1990 levels. They're way beyond that in terms of further back. So, at the Eberhardt School of Business, our revolutionary idea is that we are training the next generation of business execs and boardroom folks to get it. And so I asked you that question, do you get it? Does your organization get it? And if they don't, what are you going to do about that? Thank you.